I was 15, and I was obsessed with my Snap score. I know how that sounds now, but at 15, your Snap score is somehow a number that matters, and so I did what a lot of kids did. I added people I didn't know, accepted requests from strangers, built the number up without thinking about what that actually meant, without thinking about who was on the other side of those requests or why they were sending them. One Saturday, a group of friends were going to the mall and I wanted to go, but I didn't have a ride. I posted on my story asking if anyone could pick me up. I was expecting my cousin to respond or maybe someone from school. Instead, I got a message from a guy I had never spoken to, not once. We were friends on the app, but we had never exchanged a single photo, never had a single conversation. His message said he was bored and had nothing better to do. I asked him if he even lived in the same state. He did, but the town he mentioned was a 2-hour drive from me. I told him not to worry about it. I didn't want someone driving 2 hours just to take me to the mall, but he responded immediately. Why not? Something shifted in me at that point, something that felt wrong in a way I couldn't immediately name. But he kept insisting, and I kept pushing back, and somehow I ended up agreeing. I told him he could come, but only if he sent me a photo of himself first. I thought I was being smart. I thought I was being cautious. He sent the snap within minutes. I opened it. A man in his 30s looked back at me through the camera. Dirty hat, missing teeth, smiling at me like he already knew I was going to say yes. The caption on the snap said he was already on his way. He hadn't asked for my address. He hadn't needed to. My snap map was on. He already knew exactly where I lived. I panicked and messaged him back immediately saying a friend had offered me a ride and I didn't need him anymore. He opened the message. He never responded. I thought that was the end of it. I lived in a cul-de-sac, the kind of street where you notice every car because cars don't have a reason to be there unless they're visiting someone. For the next few days, I noticed the same black SUV driving slowly past the house, again and again. Whether it was connected, I couldn't say for certain, but I thought about it. Every time that car appeared, I thought about it. About a month later, I was scrolling through Facebook when a news story stopped me mid-scroll. There was a photograph attached to it. I recognized the face immediately. The hat, the smile, the missing teeth. The headline said he had been arrested for attempted murder. I sat with my phone in my hands for a very long time after that. A man had been willing to drive 2 hours to pick up a 15-year-old girl he had never met, using only her location on a map, and a month later, that same man was arrested for attempted murder. I turned off my Snap map that day. I should have done it long before. When I was 13, my mum had a breakdown and we lost our car. After that, me and my brother took the bus and taxi pretty much everywhere. The school arranged taxis to bring us home every day. I had gotten used to the drivers over time, recognized their faces, knew their routines. It was ordinary, safe feeling. The driver I'm going to tell you about was new. I had never seen him before. Full beard, AC/DC cap, and he apologized the moment I got in for being late. Then he asked if I wanted music, and it turned out we had almost exactly the same taste. By the time I got home, I felt completely comfortable around him. That feeling was exactly what he was counting on. About a week later, the taxi was late again, and I caught myself hoping it was him. That should have been the first sign, the fact that I was looking forward to seeing a grown man I barely knew. But I was 13 and he had been kind, and that was enough. It was him. I sat in the front this time. The conversation came easily. His phone made a notification sound I found funny, and that made him laugh, and that opened up a conversation about how funny he thought he was. He asked me if I agreed. Something about the way he asked it felt wrong, like a test, like the right answer mattered more than it should, but I pushed it aside. Then he asked my age. I told him I had just turned 15. He reached for a piece of paper and a pen. "Do you have Snapchat?" The alarm going off inside me in that moment was loud and clear, and I heard every word of it. He was 30 years old. I was 15. He was my taxi driver. The question made no sense unless it was meant to make no sense, unless the wrongness of it was the whole point. But I was alone in the car with him, and I didn't know what would happen if I said no. So I wrote my username on the paper. I spent the entire ride home staring at the seat in front of me. When I got to my room, I sat on my bed with my phone in front of me and I just waited. 10 minutes later, the notification came. He had added me. He sent a hey. At first, the messages were ordinary, friendly, the kind of conversation that could almost convince you everything was fine. Then he started asking where I lived, whether I wanted to come to his town sometime, whether I had ever tried fishing, whether we could go together. Then came the question that confirmed everything I already knew. "Why did you even add me?" He replied. "What, I thought you liked older men." I was 15, I liked my music and my friends and not having a car anymore. I did not like older men. The next morning I was terrified of getting into a taxi, any taxi. I thought about blocking him, but I was 15 and he was a large 30-year-old man, and I didn't know what mood he would be in the next time he picked me up if I made him angry. The driver who came that day was someone different. I told him everything before we had even pulled away from the curb. I asked him to tell whoever was in charge to make sure the other driver never picked me up again. The next day, he told me the driver had been fired. Apparently, he'd been doing the same thing to other young girls for a long time. None of them had spoken up. I blocked him on Snapchat and I never saw him again. But I think about the other girls, the ones who got into that taxi after me, the ones who got into it before me, the ones who wrote their username on a piece of paper in a moving car because they didn't feel safe saying no. I got lucky. I spoke up in time. Not everyone did. I was a minor in high school and I was walking home alone through downtown. It was around 5 in the afternoon and the light was already starting to go. I had my headphones in and I was listening to a podcast and I laughed at something. Just a normal laugh. Just a moment of being a person in the world, and this man nearby shot me a look. I ignored it and kept walking. 2 blocks later, he was jogging to catch up with me. He was in his 30s. He came up beside me, breathing hard, and told me he had just run a mile to talk to me. I told him it was 2 blocks. He ignored that completely and told me I was the most beautiful girl he had ever seen and asked how old I was. I told him I was a minor. He didn't hesitate. "Oh, so you're younger. I really dig that in a relationship." There was nobody around. We were at the edge of downtown where the buildings turn into apartment blocks and the streets get quiet, and I was alone and he was a grown man, and I just wanted to get away from him without making anything worse. So when he asked for my number, I gave him my Snapchat instead and walked away as quickly as I could. I thought he would send a couple of messages and give up. Within 2 hours, he had messaged me 3 times asking to take me to a bar for drinks. I reminded him I was a minor. He ignored it and sent messages that made my skin crawl, things about how I looked, what he wanted to do, how attracted he was to me. I told him what he was doing was wrong, that targeting young girls was disgusting, that he should be ashamed. He replied that he loved how fiery and sassy I was. Then he said, "I hope our babies are just like that. You're going to make a really great mother to my kids. Let me pick you up from your high school so we can mess around." I had never told him what school I went to. I had never told him I was in high school at all. I blocked him immediately and took a different route home for weeks afterwards. I never saw him again. But that line stays with me. The way he said your high school like it was already information he had, like he had already been thinking about it, already working out the details of something I didn't want to imagine. Our babies. The confidence of it, the certainty, like in his mind, something had already been decided. I think about that a lot, and I make sure I never walk that route alone anymore. This is the one that still keeps me up at night. Me and my cousin had just got back from a party. It was around 10 in the evening, and we were on the sofa watching Netflix, completely normal, completely relaxed. At some point, I jokingly told her to look behind her. We do that to each other all the time. It's a running thing between us. But this time, she said she actually saw something move at the window. I figured she was playing along, returning the scare. I forgot about it almost immediately. Then my dog jumped up and ran straight to the front door and started barking. Not the bark she does when a car goes past or when the neighbors make noise. The bark she does when something is wrong. Aggressive, sustained, locked onto the door like whatever was on the other side of it was the only thing that existed. We yelled at her to stop. She didn't stop for 3 minutes. I told myself it was the TV, but the movie had ended half an hour ago. We had been sitting in silence. It was around midnight. About an hour later, we went upstairs to get ready for bed. I was lying on my phone checking Snapchat when I opened the Snap map. There was someone at my house. Not nearby, not on my street. At my house. The name on the account was Sebastian. I did not know anyone named Sebastian. I could not remember ever adding anyone named Sebastian, but there he was on the map, positioned directly over my address last seen 1 hour ago. 1 hour ago was exactly when my dog started barking at the front door. I went back downstairs to check the locks. Every door was bolted, but then I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The alarm system was unplugged. Not broken, not malfunctioning, unplugged, deliberately disconnected from the wall. My cousin hadn't done it. Nobody in the house had done it. Nobody in the house even knew where it was plugged in. Someone had been inside. I checked the Snap map again. He had been last seen at my address an hour ago. I messaged him. Just 2 words. "Who are you?" He replied immediately. "Who am I? Who are you?" I didn't respond. His Snap score was high enough that this wasn't a fake account. This was a real person. A real person who had been at my house an hour ago when my dog lost her mind at the front door. A real person who somehow had my address. A real person who had apparently been inside my house at some point because someone had unplugged that alarm system, and it wasn't any of us. That night, we heard sounds, things that didn't belong to the house, voices outside around 2 in the morning, low and indistinct, but there. I lay in the dark and listened and didn't sleep. Sebastian didn't appear on the snap map that night. The next morning, we finally got into the security camera footage. The night before, around 2 in the morning, one of the cameras picked up a figure outside the house, moving slowly around the perimeter. Not running, not rushing, just walking calmly, methodically, like someone who had been there before, like someone who knew the layout, like someone who wasn't afraid of being seen because they had already made sure nobody would know they were coming. We called the police that morning. They reviewed the footage, searched the perimeter, made a report on the trespassing, and said they would patrol the neighborhood after dark for the next few nights. They never identified who it was. Sebastian's account went quiet. The last time I checked the snap map, he had been seen 11 minutes before I looked, still at my address, and then nothing after that. I still don't know how he got my address. My snap map was never public. I had never enabled location sharing with strangers. I do not know how a person whose name I don't recognize, whose account I don't remember adding, ended up with his location pinned directly over my house on a Friday night while we sat inside watching Netflix. I don't know who unplugged the alarm system or when. I don't know what he was doing walking around the perimeter of my house at 2 in the morning. I don't know what he wanted. And I think that is the part that frightens me most. Not knowing what someone wanted is much worse than knowing, because your mind fills in the blank, and whatever it comes up with is almost certainly not as bad as the truth. 5 stories, 5 ordinary people using an ordinary app on an ordinary day. And 5 moments when they realized that someone on the other side of that app had been watching them for much longer than they knew. Check your snap map right now. Look at who can see your location. Think about how many of those names you actually recognize, and think about the ones you don't. If something happened to you, something that started with an app, a message, a request from someone you didn't know, send it to us. The email is in the description below. I'm Hollow Dark. Subscribe for new horror stories. And tonight, before you go to sleep, turn off your location.